Perhaps the lack of communication affected you. Unexpectedly for himself, he answered the question directly.
I'm not sure, but it seems to me that the desire to kill a self-protagonist in the text takes root in the desire to alienate the described situations from a real self.
You said it as if he had prepared an answer to this question a long time ago, or at least he had thought about it before. Silence set in. Frank was embarrassed by his answer and tried to look understanding.
Well, more likely that it is just easier to kill.
The office phone rang. As soon as you came up to the phone, the ringing stopped. He barely returned to his desk when the phone rang again. As soon as you came up to the phone, the ringing stopped. He barely returned to his desk when the phone rang again. As soon as you came up to the phone, the ringing stopped. He barely returned to his desk when the phone rang again. As soon as you came up to the phone, he As soon as you came up, he barely As soon as he barely returned. As soon as he barely returned to his. As soon as you came, he barely. I clearly remembered that. There was definitely no answer. Where was I? I will have to start again. Once upon a time, there lived you. Despite his unusual name, his life was hardly any different from others. It was an unusually usual day when he was getting ready to go to work.
2 hours of sleep. What a formality,
he said to himself, glancing at his watch. He was used to working at night, just as he was used to never having days off. That morning, the buttons on his shirt were fastened faster than usual. This was not by chance. The tear-off calendar boldly declared Friday, April 3rd. It reminded him that there were only 3 work days before his holiday, and there was no room for mistakes. His room in a communal apartment was not very big, so it did not take him long to pack. Having got dressed, he quietly walked past the neighbors' rooms into the hallway. Somebody was snoring loudly in the furthest room, which caused you to smile for some reason. He walked up to the front door and accidentally stepped on a pile of letters. Picking up the envelopes, he saw his name on one of them. You automatically put it in his pocket and walked out. The thought that next Sunday, a huge stone would be removed from the entrance to the crypt of his existence by the power of labor legislation kept you going. The trip to work took him by several blocks. He considered early morning to be an extremely pleasant time of day. Universal euphoria. Although euphoria usually precedes inevitable death. As soon as he went into the park, he saw a kid in ragged clothes running away from a pack of stray dogs. His eyes caught a swiftly ticking clock hand. It was unclear what had made you so anxious. Fear of dogs or of being late to work. He distanced himself from reality, refused to play any role except that of an outside observer. However, he had had no chance to interfere. The picture of the kid falling down on the ground, breaking skin on his knees, flashed before his eyes. Then of the dogs, losing all interest in him after that. You immediately felt nauseous. Everything went dark, and it seemed to him that he was looking at himself through the eyes of the kid. Just like when he was a child. Deja vu! In order to justify his actions to himself, he took the handkerchief with his initials and handed it to the kid. Before the latter could say anything, Yu ran away to avoid further conversation. In a hurry, he went in the wrong direction, unaware of it until he ran into a locked gate on his way. He casually turned around and went to work. He was almost there when he saw his boss enter the office building. He took it as his personal failure, although his watch showed that he still had several minutes. Yu barely got into the office when he noticed two male silhouettes behind him. He turned around to see his boss and a man he had never seen before, a little further away. Figuring that they would have to be introduced to each other, he turned to the stranger first.
Let me introduce myself. You.
My name is Frank.
And you?
To avoid unnecessary explanations, Yu took a name tag from his table and pointed to it. Yes, despite the fact that there was no live communication with clients, the work charter required name tags, probably to remember his name. Wow, that's a very unusual name. Nice to meet you.
It is the only unusual detail of my life.
An awkward pause hung in the air. The boss, standing behind Frank, frowned and cast a reproachful glance at Yu.
Frank is our security guard starting today. Who? We have nothing to. A security guard. Some of my important documents are missing. There are only two of us. What kind of documents? That I cannot tell you. You mean you suspect me? No, I do not.
Eliminating any opportunity to continue this conversation, the boss turned around and went into his office. The room plunged into silence. Yu got down to some clerical work. Yu found a moment and took the morning letter out of his pocket. Glancing at the address line, a chill went through Yu's body for a split second. From Dorina. Yu was confused by the seal on the envelope, indicating the place of departure. No leave grad.
Is she coming back to Cannot?
He said out loud. Suddenly, there was a curious voice saying, "Who is coming?" You did not answer and continued reading. Dear you, my doctor's suspicions are confirmed. I have the same disease that struck you. I thought it over and decided that we need to break up. It may seem that something like this should bring people closer together, but it would be unfair to myself. We can have our last date on the morning of April 3rd in the Seafront Cafe, and then I will leave Cannot and go abroad. He felt dizzy. Another working day turned into night. The newly appointed watchman dozed off at his improvised post, an ordinary chair at the entrance to the office. Yu was sitting at his sturdy desk, imagining again and again how the shelves, stocked with books on jurisprudence, would break loose due to their own weight from friable concrete and break his head. Allowing himself a little break, Yu took his diary from his table drawer and made a note.
I never took a plate of soup at school lunches, even when I really wanted to. I was afraid to spill it in front of everyone, but I could put it on the table, which seems to be my life's pattern.
Feeling some satisfaction from writing that, he resumed work. There was a rustle of the janitor's broom and the trill of birds outside the window.
More accurate than the clock,
you thought. Chapter 2. On the second day of work, every sip of coffee came out of his nose as blood. Covering his nose with his hand, Yu went to the restroom. Excuse me, I wish I could narrate a little faster and keep you from getting bored, but it is difficult in my condition. Let's continue. Returning to his workplace, Yu saw Frank sitting at his table and leafing through his personal diary. Such violation of personal boundaries, it seemed, was about to put Yu out of temper.
Give it to me.
Here, take it. I was curious. In a moment, Yu hid his diary in the drawer of his desk. I am sorry if I offended you. The incident seemed to be over, but Frank's intrusive nature got the better of him. Can I ask you a question? Why does everyone in your notes die? Frowning, you ignore the question of the self-styled guard. The office phone rang. The ringing bored into his skull. Yu was buzzing together with the receiver. Yu involuntarily took off, but his head started spinning, and he was seeing dark spots. Holding onto the railing, Yu slid down the stairs and jumped out onto the street. He ran into his boss at the door, who stood there smoking.
Go to bed now. You can give me the rest of the papers tomorrow.
He did not have any strength left to work anyway. Although he left some things in the office, Yu was not in a hurry to go back. He sat down on the doorstep to rest. His vision was not particularly keen on the second day, so it took him a while to recognize a familiar face. Yu livened a little. A welcoming grin appeared on his face.
Hi, Max. Why are you not at work?
I dismissed my students a little early. How are you feeling?
As usual, another night shift.
If I was your father, I would have fired you long ago.
What will you have left for me then?
Max answered with a question.
Do you want me to take your shift?
No, thank you.
Yu quickly said goodbye and left. He heard some painful coughing behind his back, and his lips let out a grin of satisfaction. Coming home, Yu could barely stand on his feet. Notwithstanding his lack of sleep and fatigue, he could not fall asleep. The day flashed in his head on repeat. As for the breakup, he did not see himself as the victim. On the contrary, the entire time during his relationship with Dorina, Yu wondered,
Why did she love him? Drained of all strength and weak in spirit from birth.
he did not anymore. Dizziness and pain subsided. At some point, he even thought about calling a doctor, just to make sure that he was still alive. But sleep took its toll. Chapter 3. The alarm went off. Yu faced a new day with weakness in his legs and a throbbing headache. All night long, he had been haunted by a painfully familiar nightmare. However, when he woke up, all tangible images dissolved, only leaving a nasty precipitate. His body led him to the kitchen in search of caffeine. Despite the early hours, he found his boss there.
How are you feeling?
Yu heard the question, but ignored it because of his sleepy state.
How difficult is it to answer?
Yu was pleased to hear the words of concern, even coming that way.
I'm sorry, Father.
A cup in Yu's hand inevitably filled with bloody coffee.
You look like shit.
I feel like it.
I do not want to lose my last son, even someone like you.
His father had his old wool suit on and was about to leave for work.
You do not have to go to the office today. Get some rest.
Okay, I will try.
Yu went to his room and sat down at his desk. He took a pen and then remembered that he left his diary at work. Yu took some letters out of the drawer, which had not been sent for some reason. He took one of the letters and added a few lines to it.
Remember when grandfather made me listen to a rhythmic beat in the air? It is the heartbeat of a gigantic whale who swallowed our universe. And I believed him. What about you? You said it was just train wheels wobbling. So I decided that the whale had died a long time ago, which was better than it being just a fantasy. Do you understand? Asking you this is easy on paper because you will not answer me.
Adding those lines, he felt he had completed something important and allowed himself to take a nap. Once he dozed off, he heard a knock on the door. Any unexpected knock on the door or telephone call could evoke severe paranoia in you. Because the knock on your door is louder and more alarming than on any other door. In a moment, there was rustling of envelopes slipping into the mail slot of the front door. It seemed to him that he had been tossing about in his bed, trying to fall asleep for several hours. He stayed awake, so he decided to glance through the delivered letters. He had already learned to enjoy his rubbery legs and dizziness. Looking through the stack of utility bills, you found the letter addressed to him. It was a letter from the sanatorium where he had undergone treatment that summer.
Dear Mr. Yu, I am afraid I have to inform you that you were misdiagnosed due to a serious mistake on my part. An unfortunate confusion of the documents led me to make the wrong diagnosis. Your debility is of psychological nature, which can be associated with a frequent exposure to stressful situations. You are not suffering from an incurable disease. Please accept my sincere apologies. Your attending physician, K.
His legs gave way under him, not because of weakness, but because of a sudden boost of energy. His heart pounded with the strength of a whale, but with the speed of a shrew. He laid down on the bed, unable to withstand a rush of emotion. With an unusual smile on his face, he was staring at the ceiling. After a few minutes, he asked with horror,
A new chandelier?
Raise your shoulders toward the wind, man. They are at your feet. You have done your duty. That will not forgive you. Open up your curtains. Light will not hurt you. Lovely old women.
Chapter 3. The alarm went off. You faced a new day with weakness in his legs and a throbbing headache. All night long, he had been haunted by a painfully familiar nightmare. However, when he woke up, all tangible images dissolved, only leaving a nasty precipitate. His body led him to the kitchen in search of caffeine. Despite the early hours, he found his boss there.
How are you feeling?
You heard the question, but ignored it because of his sleepy state.
How difficult is it to answer?
You was pleased to hear the words of concern, even coming that way.
I'm sorry, Father.
A cup in Yu's hand inevitably filled with bloody coffee.
You look like shit.
I feel like it.
I do not want to lose my last son, even someone like you.
His father had his old wool suit on and was about to leave for work.
You do not have to go to the office today. Get some rest.
You did not tell anyone about this, but I am going to tell you confidentially. He believed that the disease manifested itself most fiercely when he went to bed. That was why you did not like sleep. His night fantasies became crazier with time. Every dream seemed to him a step closer to insanity. In order to control himself, he regularly looked at his hands and at the clock hands. He walked out of the door and noticed a stranger near the opposite house. That stranger was an identical copy of you, as if his long-lost twin. You froze and watched him. The door was half open, and he saw a pretty girl and a little boy, probably the same age as the kid, behind it. The newly appeared copy of you smiled, said goodbye to his family, and disappeared. You decided to follow the imposter. He was filled with excitement and almost childish curiosity. Yu's assiduous attempts not to give himself away were unwarranted. His double had no intention of turning around. The pavement, the slums, the sound of the heartbeat of a whale. A straight path led them to the railway station. Suddenly, the second you turned back in the direction of the original, but the latter went unnoticed. The station was unusually empty. The double went to the counter and bought a ticket. You, without much hesitation, waited for a convenient moment and went up to the same window.
I would like the same ticket, the same time.
A heavy, apathetic cashier automatically held out the requested ticket without batting an eye. The ticket said 8 o'clock. The train was about to arrive. The double sat on a bench near the right track. You stayed at a distance, keeping an eye on him. He was so excited that the illness fell into the background. The train rattled in the distance. The double got up and walked to the edge of the platform. You came close to him, forgetting about precautions. Yes, he had decided to start a conversation. He was going to do it in the car, so that the double could not escape. Before you realized what was happening, the double threw himself under the moving train. You choked from horror. His feet seemed glued to the platform. Everything around him froze. In a moment, hysterical screams of eyewitnesses pierced the frozen air. How come he had not noticed them before?
Somebody was killed!
He pushed him.
Get him! Train rattle squeezed out the last drops of sanity. Blurred silhouettes, impregnated with human justice, surrounded you. Is this the end? The alarm went off. You faced a new day with weakness in his legs